I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
That was President Donald J. Trump taking his oath as the 47th President of the United States of America. It was just a few steps away from our studios here in Washington, D.C., where the 60th presidential inauguration ceremony was held just a few days ago on January 20th, 2025. Welcome to Our Voices. I am Oriani Tangishaka, and joining me are my co-hosts Siminish Yakoye and Jeannie Niwa. This week's episode, together, let's briefly discuss the highlights from the ceremonies as well as the hopes and expectations for women and girls, both here in America and around the world. Now, ladies, how are you doing today?
Hello. Good, how are you?
Well, it's been about 2 months since President Donald Trump was elected in office. Now he's the president. And what are some of the reactions that you are getting from your listeners or viewers on the continent and in the diaspora, about his return to office, and what are their hopes and expectations from America?
Yeah, well, as you said, we've been talking to people here in the U.S. and also on the continent before the election, after the election, and now after the inauguration. And as we all know, some of the reasons why people voted for Trump are his family values, immigration, and the economy, mostly. So now that he actually took office and he's resumed work, people want him to prioritize the economy. Actually, many Trump voters, they want to, be financially better off immediately. They also want him to start working on stabilizing, the peace and globally.
Yes,
that's one of his promises. There is the war in Middle East. There is the Ukraine and Russia war. There are wars in Africa. We'll see if we'll be interested in intervening in the wars in Africa. But as per his promise, they want him to decrease the conflicts going on around the world. But when it comes to immigration, there is a lot of uncertainty and there is a lot of fear. He promised that he will, do something about illegal immigration, but a lot of people fear even the legal immigration processes will be affected on the way. So a lot of immigrant community, they fear about the future of immigration and their status.
Yeah, and talking about immigrant community, from my observation when it comes to the Congolese diaspora and a lot of African communities, they had, they put this support in his election, because of his family values, I suppose. And so in churches, there were great mobilization. So it's almost bittersweet. There's a lot of love, but also a lot of uncertainties.
Yes.
His immigration policies are question mark, what's going to happen to us.
Yes.
So it's, love and hate, absolutely. He has a lot of support. They love a great deal, about his policies, and it's wait and see.
That is true, but one thing I know that is we are already seeing several of President Trump's campaign promises being fulfilled, right? The diversity, equity, and inclusion offices and programs being dismantled, and we know that office was responsible for the inclusion and protection of the LGBT communities.
Yeah.
And something interesting is that we were used to hearing from the leaders on the continent. But now we are hearing the same thing here in America when it comes to the gender debate. As you will hear in our program today, during his inauguration speech, President Donald Trump declared, saying, as of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there is only 2 genders, male and female. We used to hear that a lot on the continent, so interesting there.
So Donald Trump also called for a revolution of common sense in his inaugural speech Monday. The swearing in of the 47th President of the United States marked his remarkable return to power. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
Donald Trump is sworn in as the 47th President of the United States.
So help me God.
He vowed to fulfill campaign promises and called for a revolution of common sense, including cracking down on illegal immigration.
I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. We will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country.
As in his 2017 inaugural address, Trump lamented the failures of his predecessor. He promised to slash the federal budget and roll back legal protections for transgender Americans.
As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
Trump comes to power amid continuing conflict in Ukraine and a fragile ceasefire in Gaza.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into.
He repeated his intention to reclaim control of the Panama Canal.
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
All living presidents attended the inauguration, along with foreign dignitaries from Argentina, China, and Italy, as well as tech billionaires and Trump donors Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg. The inauguration ceremony was moved inside the Capitol due to weather. Not all of Trump's supporters were able to watch from the Capital One Arena, a nearby indoor stadium. They have high expectations.
Freedom back in our country, safety back in our country, closed borders, and peace through strength in the world.
Earlier on Monday, outgoing President Joe Biden hosted Trump for morning tea at the White House, despite the harsh words the two men have traded. It's one of many transfer of power traditions. Trump did not participate in any during Biden's 2021 inauguration. Trump has warned of retribution, and minutes before leaving office, Biden pardoned key figures in his administration and family members. Biden has called Trump a threat to democracy. On January 6, 2021, Trump supporters swarmed the Capitol to overturn Biden's 2020 victory. Trump has pledged to pardon some of those convicted.
Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents.
Also following tradition, Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance attended a luncheon with members of Congress. He is entering office with his Republican Party holding the majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.
Thank you so much, Patsy Widakuswara, for that report. Well, for more insights on how President Donald Trump's return to the White House may impact the African continent, we are happy to have with us here in studios Professor Dr. Nola Haynes. She is the National Security and Foreign Policy expert at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service here in Washington, D.C. And also Carrie Sheffield, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Voice, the political arm of the Independent Women's Forum, a right-of-center nonprofit organization which focuses on policy issues affecting women. She's joining us via Zoom from here in Washington, D.C. Dr. Haynes and Mrs. Sheffield, it's a pleasure to have both of you guys here with us to discuss this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. And now, I guess we can start with Dr. Haynes here in the studio. We're looking at family policies globally. President Trump's first term, the Mexico City policy was in full effect, which prohibited states from contributing to foreign and non-governmental organizations that performed or promoted abortions as a method of family planning, or the gag rule. Do we foresee those kind of policies moving forward to be the norm? And would that affect the U.S.-Africa relations? Because a lot of the programs, a lot of these health clinics on the continent were relying on those funds. What do you see in terms of U.S.-Africa relations there?
Regarding U.S.-Africa relations on that issue, we have to wait and see. There's still a lot of guidance that has not come out yet around these issues, but what we do have is what's already available, the policies that have already happened, overturning Roe v. Wade. So there's some inclination there that could maybe help us forecast what's to come. Now, in terms of why it's important for women's health, clearly it is very important for women's health, but maybe this is an opportunity for more NGOs to step in and fill that void versus having federal funding.
Correct. Let me turn to Mrs. Sheffield. What do you foresee? I mean, you're in the Independent Women's Voice. What is your prediction there when it comes to, women's rights or women's reproductive rights moving forward in this new administration, the second new administration?
Sure. So specifically on abortion, I'll just speak from my personal perspective because we do not take a position on abortion for Independent Women's Forum and Independent Women's Voice because we focus on other issues. So I'll speak personally. And I will point out that today is the March for Life here domestically in the United States. And our Vice President, J.D. Vance, will be attending that and speaking at March for Life. And President Trump will provide a recording to the marchers. I have been an activist and I have marched in March for Life. So I am a pro-life activist in my personal capacity, and I support what President Trump did in his first term, which was to reinstate the Mexico City policy, which is to remove funding for any organization or NGO internationally that provides abortion or refers people for abortion. And I want to point out that it's very important to note this is not about reducing. It does not reduce the funding by a single penny. It simply redirects it to organizations that are worthy by following the U.S. policy. And so any organization that wants to continue to receive funding should respect the foreign policy of the United States, and they will be able to receive that funding. And so I think it will certainly be a step forward to protect not only women, but also innocent children.
Ms. Sheffield, one of the executive orders the president signed on the first day is starting the motion to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement and also from WHO. As we know, women, especially on the continent, are victims of a lot of climate change related impacts, and also there are a lot of global health related issues that affect women on the continent and also elsewhere. So how does this move affect global health initiative, and what should be the way forward?
Sure. So I'll start with on the climate change, the Paris climate change. I applaud President Trump for pulling the United States out of this agreement because this agreement it's been a farce since day one. It has not been enforced in China. China is by far multiple times more of an emitter than the United States and other Western countries, and there's no accountability for it. And so President Trump has, the emperor has no clothes on. The accord is meaningless. And so there's no point in the United States contorting itself in order to try to kowtow to China. That's really what this is about. And when it comes to Europe, for example, Germany and other countries have tried to impose massive government controls and spending in the name of trying to combat climate change. And guess what's happened? It's actually resulted in Germany having to rely even more on coal because unfortunately renewable sources do not have the scientific capacity to produce energy at the levels that other sources can do it at a cost-effective level. And what's happened in Germany and other countries that have tried to do this is that the poor and middle class have suffered. They've seen their energy bills skyrocket. And so to protect poor women and to protect middle-class women, this is the right move.
Yeah,
and
maybe Dr. Hayes here also might have something to say about this. Let me have you react to that, and then we'll go to the next question.
Well, I definitely have a bit of a different perspective. Personally, being upended and having been on the opposite receiving end of the very real threat of climate, being from New Orleans, my family suffered Katrina. And then also we lost a lot of homes in the recent fires in California, in Eaton Canyon and Altadena. We lost 4 homes. So in terms of the real impacts of climate, that is real. If we want to put a wider international lens on it, I was part of a study where we actually looked at the impacts of international climate changes, specifically in the Sahel. And there is a situation going on there because of water insecurity, because of drought, where farmers and herders are involved in this conflict. And so what someone like me cares about in terms of women and girls is what's happening to the women at the homestead. You know, what's happening when the men are involved in this conflict, what happens when they die or don't come back home. That puts more strain on the mother who's raising children. And so now this is this kind of situation that's exacerbated by climate, where you have a greater strain on women who are in the homestead, and then also now have to go out and, you know, recoup that money that's lost from the brother or the father or the husband who may not come back home. So in terms of the real impacts. Okay, I'll leave it there.
We'll definitely have a lot to chew on here, and we'll continue the conversation. But let's take a short break, and please do stay with us. We have a lot to talk about. When we return, we will shift our focus to women and girls by looking at U.S.-Africa policies under President Trump's second administration. Share this with us on our social media platforms at VOA Africa. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. Stay with us, and we'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depend on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back. You are with Our Voices. We're discussing the recent inauguration of the new President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. We'll discuss now the highlights of the ceremony, as well as the hopes and expectations from women and girls in different aspects of life in America and around the world. We are very happy to have here with us in studio Dr. Nola Haynes, Georgetown University professor of national security and foreign policy, and also Carrie Sheffield, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Voice, the political arm of the Independent Women's Forum, a right-of-center nonprofit organization which focuses on policy issues affecting women here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to you both. And I guess before we continue, we do have some voices from the continent.
Yeah, before we dive into our conversation, let's hear some of what people on the continent, what their hopes are in America's new president. We have Grace Kemalho and Sami Kipkemboi from Nairobi, Kenya, Nasra Abdulkadir Muhundin from Mogadishu, Somalia, Esther Shinwe and Blessing Enogekwan from Abuja, Nigeria, in our Your Voices segment.
We wish to urge him in his quest to make America great, that he continues to support Africa, like through programs like those ones that are done through the USAID, because they have helped Africa a lot. They've improved the quality of life for the people of Kenya and people of Africa. So we wish him to continue with that.
Africa is a continent with immense potential, brimming with opportunity for growth, innovation, and partnership. We hope your administration will recognize the value of intensely ties with African nations and fostering collaboration in areas like trade, education, and development.
They should stop illegal immigrants coming into the country. They should try and make America be great the way it was before.
The world is crying. We are not only looking at Gaza Strip where the Palestinians are. We are also remembering that there is massacre going on in Congo, massacre going on in South Sudan, and violation of human rights in our country, Kenya. So we are expecting the government of Donald Trump to focus more on making sure that the human rights are respected worldwide.
I believe he will come in and work in the United States of America and make it a better place.
Well, I want to talk about the trade agreement, AGOA, which is up for renewal this year. How critical is this renewal agreement, for strengthening U.S.-Africa trade and investment relations?
Well, I'm a huge believer in maintaining U.S.-Africa relationships and partnerships. And so it makes sense that the U.S. continues to invest in the continent. I mean, just the talent on the continent in and of itself. The fact that it is the continent with the youngest population. You have creativity, you have energy, you have talent. You want to invest in that. You want to maintain these relationships and these partnerships. And I really want to lean on that word partnership, right? Because what we don't want is a repeat of how these things were once upon a time that had more of a colonial, I'm going to tell you what to do, versus it's important for us to work together to achieve a goal, right? Like the Libido Corridor in Angola and Zambia, that absolutely is an important partnership to maintain. So I'm very pro-investment with the continent.
Maybe Dr. Sheffield, in addition to the trade and investment relationship, how do you foresee the Trump administration approaching or dealing with instability in the Horn of Africa and also the war in Sudan, for example?
Yeah, so we know based on his first administration, and he's consistent, that his approach in general to foreign policy is that he seeks peace through strength, that he wants to reduce bloodshed and global conflict, and he will be working toward that end. The fact that he has helped broker peace agreements, I believe he will continue to do that. I believe he will be more successful than Joe Biden was at getting the combatants in the Sudan conflict to the table. Unfortunately, Biden was not very successful on that front. Although I do commend Biden for imposing some sanctions on some of these combatants who have been violating human rights in Sudan. And so I expect President Trump to continue those sanctions and even to expand them, because he's shown he is not afraid to punish bad actors. And in general, when it comes to trade, I do believe that Trump will also make sure that any trade partner who's benefiting from trade with the United States will not be engaging in undermining foreign policy, whether that's in South Africa. They have, unfortunately, some ties with some unsavory characters in China and Russia, that we'll see some accountability on that, and that people who are trading with us and benefiting from us will not be undermining us with the other hand.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. Well, that's on the economy end. Let's go maybe on the political end. Let me turn to Dr. Haynes. Some of the continent's leaders did like the fact that Donald Trump, in the first office, President Trump, was not really into meddling in African political affairs. And in fact, many times he says he won't be involved in regime change. You know, what can we expect this time around with the growing influence of China and other superpowers?
That's a great question. And, you know, in terms of meddling, I agree, and African leaders would agree. At the U.S.-Africa Forum that happened a few years ago, I will never forget that the president of Ghana at that time made it very clear that we aren't here because we want a repeat of colonial actors. We are independent leaders of independent countries. And that is how, you know, they want to be thought of and respected, right? So that's one piece of it. In terms of regime change, I've never thought that the United States should be involved in any sort of regime change, historically and even now. But I do think, again, I'm going to go back to that word partnership, right? I do think it makes sense to maintain and strengthen partnerships and relationships with African countries.
And let me turn maybe quickly to Ms. Sheffield. Just 30 seconds, what do you think on the political front?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that President Trump, I mean, his policy is always America first. And so he's always looking at any international engagement from that lens. Does this advance the geostrategic interests of the United States? And he wants people to be able to have freedom, not only in the United States, but everywhere, including in Africa. And so I think you'll see him continue that just like he did in his first administration.
That's awesome. That is really a great conversation. I'm so thankful. Today, this is our show. Thanks to our guest, Dr. Nola Haynes, here with us in studio, the National Security and Foreign Policy expert at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, and Carrie Sheffield, Senior Policy Analyst at the Independent Women's Voice here in Washington, D.C. Catch this episode and other Our Voices program on our website at voaafrica.com or our YouTube channel. Thanks to our editorial team, production team here on Our Voices, and on behalf of Voice of America, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, it's good day.